Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Just sent a text to a mutual friend of Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican of Arkansas, John Hinderaker, who one of the guys at Powerline. And I said to him, Senator, that I don't have anything to say about Minnesota except the last thing law enforcement wants is a law enforcement officer-involved shooting, and that I don't know what happened, and I'm sure it will be completely investigated, but it sure would be good if Governor Walz and Mayor Frey worked with the federal government pursuant to the Supremacy Clause. You got anything to add to that?
No, Hugh, I think it's all very well said. The deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy were regrettable tragedies, but they were avoidable as well and could have been avoided. And such incidents can be avoided in the future if state and local officials will simply cooperate with federal law enforcement, or at least not actively obstruct them and encourage civilians to interfere as well. Hugh, we've had ICE and Homeland Security investigation arrests in Arkansas. They've had many, many more in Texas and Georgia and Florida than what's occurred in Minnesota. None of those have been in the news because you don't have state and local officials in those states agitating against ICE. So I was pleased to see the president today said he had a constructive call with Tim Walz. Hopefully that means that Minnesota officials will again start cooperating, or at least not actively obstructing and encouraging civilians to interfere with and harass federal law enforcement officers.
Well, thank you for that, Senator, and we will see. Now, coming up next hour, I have from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, Ben Taliblu, their senior fellow and head of their Iranian program there, talking about what appears to be an imminent collision between the United States and Iran. If such a kinetic strike is ordered by the president, what do you think the objective of it ought to be, Senator?
Well, first off, I want to be clear that I'm not prejudging or saying anything like that might happen. I think the world widely knows the position of our aircraft carriers, and one is getting a lot closer to the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman than it once was. But I think the objective of U.S. policy right now in this moment, given the massive protests and the massacres of those protesters, should be, one, anything that can help the protesters and reduce the violence against them, anything that can put more pressures on the Ayatollahs. And that's not just, for instance, military action. We can ramp up our enforcement of sanctions. Iran has already been suffering badly from increased sanctions enforcement over the last year. We can do more. You've seen us interdict the so-called ghost vessels coming out of Venezuela. France interdicted one from Russia just last week. With Venezuela now in, let's say, more compliant hands, if not necessarily friendly hands, we can put more of those assets perhaps against Iran's black market oil exports. So we still have many options that will allow us to keep the pressure on the Ayatollahs.
Now, Senator, I have been emphasizing to everyone, it's not a risk-free thing. The Lincoln is a target. There are 5,000 sailors on that. The Iranians are not without capabilities that are enormous. But do you fear Hezbollah inside of the United States or another Iranian-backed operative acting after any kinetic activity?
Well, Hugh, I think we need to be mindful that Hezbollah has been a cat's paw of Iran for decades, and they've had an active policy of trying to infiltrate the West. They've carried out terrorist attacks outside of Iran in the Middle East. And that's one reason why Maduro was so uniquely dangerous in Latin America. It wasn't just drug trafficking with the arms of the government. He was inviting Hezbollah and Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps into our backyard. I know that the administration is being mindful of that, Department of Justice and Homeland Security, about threats inside of the United States, irrespective of whether or not there might be additional military action soon against Iran, something they take very seriously and work against every day.
Now, Senator, I want to switch to Canada, of all things. To go from Iran to Canada is quite the neck turn. But Prime Minister Carney went to China and announced an alliance with the Chinese Communist Party, which just stunned me. Then he went to Davos and basically insulted the president and the United States for 15 minutes by putting us in a category with China as a hegemon and ignoring. I know 158 Canadians died in Afghanistan where you served, and I don't know if they were in Iraq or not. I know they were our ally in the Korean War, and they are friends, and we are friendly with Canada. But what did you make of the Carney Davos speech and his announcement of an, quote, alliance with China?
Well, Hugh, like you, I don't have a lot of time for Mark Carney sucking up to Chinese communists and then ridiculing and insulting the United States and our president. It's fine. Look, every nation has a right to pursue its interests. And if Mark Carney and Canadians disagree with this, that, or the other United States policy, it's fine to oppose that. I think it's more constructive to have a frank and candid conversation directly with the president or with Secretary Rubio than to go and grandstand and peacock in Davos. But what's truly appalling is having done that, as you said, just days after sucking up to the Chinese communist dictator Xi Jinping and acting as somehow communist China is more closely aligned with Canada than the United States. Again, it's fine for any foreign leader, foreign country to be opposed to this, that, or the other American policy, but to suck up to Xi Jinping while you peacock at Davos, I think is repellent.
Well, I am more exercised about this than I am when evildoers do evil things, because they're supposed to be our friends. They are our friends. Most Canadians are our friends. And my daughter-in-law is a Canadian-American, for goodness sake, and her whole family are my good friends. And I just think, what in the world? He went to Davos and preached human rights after shaking the very bloody hand of Xi Jinping, the Uyghur genocide, the Hong Kong repression. Jimmy Lai is in jail. Taiwan is threatened. It was like a banker's teddy bear picnic in Davos. I hope you never go.
Well, I've never been yet, Hugh. I'm glad that President Trump has gone now a couple times at least, and explained exactly to all of those bureaucrats why the United States is the way we are and what course of action we're taking. I will say I do think there's more than a small dose of domestic politics in Canada with Mark Carney. As you suggested, Mark Carney is not a career politician. He's a longtime banker. He kind of stumbled backwards into the premiership after Justin Trudeau ran aground, and I think he views this as good domestic politics for him, and that his base of voters, which kind of like the far left in America, is more sympathetic and supportive of a communist dictator in China than they are of Donald Trump.
And the last question, Senator Collins, your colleague, chairman of the Appropriations Committee, chairwoman of Appropriations, got all of them done or ready to go. Do you expect the Senate will keep the government open by passing these appropriation bills?
Well, I certainly hope so, Hugh, and that was the expectation until 2 or 3 days ago during the most recent shooting in Minnesota. Now the Democrats are saying they're going to shut down not just ICE, Hugh, but FEMA and TSA after a major winter storm, and other departments like the Department of Defense and the Transportation Department, because they do not want to arrest and deport criminal illegal aliens. That doesn't seem to me to be a tenable position, Hugh. And even Patty Murray, the senior Democratic counterpart to Susan Collins on the Appropriations Committee, said just a few days ago, if we shut down the government, it won't do anything to stop what ICE is doing in Minnesota. She acknowledged that the action of shutting down the government would not stop anything that they're condemning right now. Yet apparently they may do so anyway. I hope not.
Well, Chuck Schumer is not the brightest bulb in the light of the Senate. Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you, Senator. Good luck this week, and I'll be right back. America, stay tuned.